Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
Hi, Dev.
Hello.
Okay, question for you.
Yeah, what's up, homie?
How do you feel about jazz, blues?
Oh, I love jazz and blues. No.
Both?
Whoops. Yeah. I think I find myself turning on jazz more than blues.
Oh, okay.
No, but I enjoy both of them. My grandparents, my mother's parents, are actually both jazz musicians.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's a story, at least my mom would say, that I'm going to say it's true.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That my mom's mom, she was a drum player. She had dinner with Louis Armstrong.
Crazy.
Yeah, and my mom's dad played the bass.
Okay.
They were jazz musicians. So I love jazz. I didn't really like it as much when I was younger.
Sure.
You know, like it's kind of hard to get into jazz when you're a kid.
Fair.
But there came a point when I got older, I don't know really when, I was like staying up late, living at home. And like I was like doing something. I just like turned on some like jazz music because it was late at night and I didn't want anything loud, but I didn't want anything like high energy. I was just trying to like wind down. I was like, fuck,
Sure.
like this hits right now. And then when I was working at Starbucks, I would always change the music to like whatever jazz station they allowed us to play, but it'd always switch over in like 3 songs to the fucking pop music. I'm like, it is 4 a.m.
Right.
I don't need this right now.
Don't need top hits, right?
I'm trying to create an aesthetic. It's raining, hitting the windows. The L light is really going by, and it's just smooth jazz. Like not even smooth jazz, just like regular jazz. Because there's a difference between all sorts of jazz.
Yeah.
I don't really like the 80s romance movie jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer some more of the classics, a little bit more upbeat.
Sure.
Bebop subgenre of jazz is great. It's got a little bit more action going on.
Okay.
No, I love jazz.
I can tell.
Yeah. Blues is fun. Blues it has a lot of great influence for the rest of like music in general, especially rock and roll and stuff like that. A lot of the great guitarists will have either come out of blues or listen to blues artists to like learn guitar or pick up riffs and whatnot, like and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So I love jazz and blues.
That's awesome.
What are we talking about today? Do you like jazz and blues?
Let me tell you more. Bits and pieces.
Sure.
I think I respect the work of jazz and blues artists and how that, to your point, has
huge
influence in
on
so many
the
other
culture.
genres. Yeah. I think jazz can get a little iffy for me.
Yeah.
Blues, I just don't lean towards them, but I think
Sure.
like specific songs or things like that, I do enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's more so like I respect it more than I like turn to it to put on.
Sure.
Sometimes I think when it gets a little too like, it just it gets a little like muzak for me.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm fine.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really, I don't know. I just like the high energy, the talent that goes into being able to play jazz and stuff like that. I joke a lot about Kenny G. I don't really like a lot of Kenny G's music, really any of it, but like I just love talking about Kenny G because he's funny. I have a Kenny G board game. Every New Year's Eve, I play Kenny G's Auld Lang Syne at midnight because it's funny, but I don't actually like Kenny G.
Sure. Well, and I would say like, I feel like more classic jazz and blues than modern.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. I think like, yes, like absolutely not like the 80s kind of like romantic.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know. I also just don't dive into it enough. I think it's to your point, like the first time I kind of heard it was through band orchestra, like growing up, like in music and stuff. And so it wasn't something I kind of like leaned towards. I think if I started to dive into it a little bit more, I could see myself enjoying some of it. But it just kind of depends.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put on some jazz records or like just put on a jazz radio station.
Totally.
Or specific albums, I'd say more so because I want a specific artist. I want to have a specific feel
for
like when I'm working or like writing out my notes for these episodes. Sometimes I'll listen to a whole jazz album, and it's just like, let's just keep going. Like it helps me center, and that's something that I need with my brain, and it's something that a tool that I found helps. Jazz really helps me center myself. That lo-fi music, synthwave, whatever.
Totally.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, I do appreciate like especially like improv in jazz. Like
it's crazy.
You have to be able to feel a beat and like really speak to one another through what you're playing and understand like when like there literally is just communication through the music.
Yeah.
And I think that's really impressive. And I really enjoy the connection within that.
Yeah. Especially like if you like being able to improvise at that level, you have to have some type of understanding of musical theory, and not many of those jazz artists were able to go to school to learn that theory.
Totally.
They just had either an innate sense or learned it along the way. Which
right.
Either option is just an insane amount of talent that goes into that person playing this instrument. And it's just very fascinating to be able to. It's cool. It's cool. I love jazz.
Well, then, okay. So then you might know this person.
Sure.
And you might be able to add some things in.
I'm terrible with names, but go ahead.
I mean, I think this is pretty distinctive.
Is it Louis Armstrong?
No. Okay. So Devin.
Yeah.
What do you know
about
Josephine Baker?
Josephine Baker. Mm-hmm. Oh, that does sound very familiar. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. It sounds familiar. I'll probably be like, yeah. So like I normally do.
I think if I showed you a picture, you would definitely know her.
Sure.
But she is an American-born French bisexual dancer, singer, actress, and spy.
Oh.
She was the first black woman to star in a major motion picture, and she was the iconic image of the and symbol of the jazz age and the roaring 20s, kind of the Beyonce of her time, if you will.
Oh.
Nothing?
I think I got stuck on I did an episode on Sarah Josephine Baker.
Oh, that's right. Yes, because I remember that episode. You're like, do you know Sarah Josephine Baker? I was like, I do. I know. Yes. Yeah. And all I could think of was her.
Yeah.
And yeah. That's what we're switching.
That's where we're at.
So, what do you call it? That's hysterical. So, I think she's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll get into, of course, her whole story and what she did during World War II. But the reason before the episode started, I was saying that I'm going to need your help with pronunciations is, and if you recall, she is an American-born French person. So, oui. So, as many people have told me, I don't pronounce French things well.
I've told you several times.
I pronounce them as a Spanish speaker, and that's not correct. Correct. We ready?
Yeah.
Let's get it. So, born Frida Josephine McDonald on June 3rd, 1906 in St. Louis, Missouri. Mm-hmm. So, little known ancestry. Yeah. Not a lot. So her mother was Carrie McDonald, was adopted in Little Rock in 1886 by Richard and Elvira McDonald, both former slaves of African and Native American descent.
Okay.
Her father, Josephine's father, was unknown. So Baker's estate is listed her father as Eddie Carson, but evidence suggests otherwise.
Okay, sure.
So Baker's foster son, Jean-Claude, published in his biography of Baker that Carrie McDonald, her mother, was admitted to the exclusively white female hospital on May 3rd, 1906, and discharged on June 17th, which is kind of odd.
Very.
As a black woman. The father listed on the birth certificate was simply EDW. So kind of the beginning of like Edward.
Okay.
But that's it.
Yeah. Or it's initials of EDW.
Potentially. Yeah. Thoughts are that Baker's father was white, as Carrie worked for a German family around the time she became pregnant.
Oh, so it might have been like a hush-hush. Like,
it might have been like let's just, the only hospital I know is this one. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to go to the other hospital.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, that's a little bit of the ancestry.
Sure.
Baker grew up in the Chestnut Valley neighborhood of St. Louis, which was racially mixed, low-income area near Union Station. Mm-hmm. Carrie married Arthur Martin, quote, a kind but perpetually unemployed man, and, quote, they had 3 children, 1 son and 2 daughters. Together. This was in addition to Josephine Baker, right?
Sure.
So Josephine supported her family and helped her mother, who took in laundry, even working at the age of 8 as a live-in domestic for white families in the city. She unfortunately suffered a lot of abuse during that time. One woman abused Baker by burning her hands when she put too much soap in the laundry.
Oh.
Yeah. Which I was like,
what?
How is that helpful?
That's crazy.
Right.
Wait. As punishment,
she burned her hands.
I'm sorry.
Not like through the soap she burned her hands.
Yeah, that's what I. That's what I picked up.
What chemical are you using?
Soap back then was crazy.
No. The white woman punished Baker by burning her hands. Yeah,
gotcha. Now I'm with you.
Incredible. So in 1917, at the age of 11, Baker witnessed the East St. Louis massacre, which had terrified and scarred and was an influence for later activism. So the East St. Louis massacre was on the East St. Louis is on the Illinois side.
Sure is.
And basically it was just white people running amok in black communities and killing and burning down houses and having them flee and all these things. And so Baker says, quote, "I can still see myself standing on the west bank of the Mississippi, looking over into East St. Louis and watching the glow of the burning of homes lighting the sky. We children stood huddled together in bewilderment, frightened to death with the screams of the families running across the bridge with nothing but what they had on their backs and as their worldly belongings. So that with this vision, I ran and ran and ran."
Wow.
Mm-hmm. End quote. 1918, at the age of 12, Baker dropped out of school, and a year later, at 13, she had started working as a waitress at the Old Chauffeurs Club.
13?
At 13.
Jesus.
At this time, she lived as a, quote, street child in the slums.
Okay.
So sleeping in cardboard shelters, scouting for food in garbage cans, and earning more money by dancing on street corners as she could.
Oh.
While waitressing, she met Willie Wells, whom she married at the age of 13.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
The marriage lasted less than a year.
Oh, no.
And he moved on to the other 13-year-old.
Yeah.
After the divorce, she started performing with a street performance group called the Jones Family Band.
After the divorce. All right. Yeah.
After some unrelenting badgering of a local show manager, she was also recruited for the St. Louis choir or chorus vaudeville act.
Okay.
So in 1921, at the age of 15...
Yeah. Did you get married again?
Baker married...
Fuck. God. All right.
Baker married Willie Howard Baker, but left him when her vaudeville troupe was booked in a New York City venue. They separated into 2000. They separated in 1925 as her career success had just begun.
Yeah.
She often fought with her mother, who opposed her becoming an entertainer and scolded her for not tending to her husband.
Oh.
You got to do that when you're 15.
Uh-huh.
So while in New York, she auditioned several times and secured a role in the chorus line of a touring production of Shuffle Along.
Okay.
Do you know Shuffle Along?
No.
Okay. It was an all-black musical that was both groundbreaking and wildly successful, with such stars as Florence Mills, Paul Robeson, and Adelaide Hall.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Baker was a dancer at the end of the chorus line and did not want to be overshadowed by the others, so she would add a little hint of comedy into her routine that made her stand out.
Uh-oh.
I know.
It's not very ensemble of you.
No, not very chorus line. Cassie. Anyway, for all you chorus line people, you'll get it. So Baker stayed with the touring company, but once she turned 16, she moved to the Broadway production until its closed in 1923.
Wow.
Because you can't be on Broadway until you're 16.
No.
Of course not. So, 1924, Baker is cast in the chorus of the Chocolate Dandies. The show runs for 96 performances before closing in November of 1925, but she left the show early and sailed to Paris, like September-ish of 1925. So, while in Paris on October 2nd, 1925, at the age of 19, Baker opened La Revue Negre at the Theatre des Champs-Élysées. What's the big street?
Champs-Élysées.
Champs-Élysées. Yeah, that one. I can keep on referring to you. So in a 1974 interview in The Guardian, Baker states, quote, "No, I didn't get my first break on Broadway. I was only in the chorus in Shuffle Along and Chocolate Dandies. I became famous first in France in the 20s. I just couldn't stand America, and I was one of the first colored Americans to move to Paris. Oh yes, Bricktop was there as well. Me and her were the only two, and we had a marvelous time. Of course, everyone who was anyone knew Bricky, and they got to know Miss Baker as well." And Bricktop is a jazz blues artist as well, who went over to France.
Sure.
So in 1926, Baker stars in the Folie Bergère, where she performed the Danse Sauvage. The
Sauvage.
Savage Dance, sure. Wearing little more than a short skirt of strung together artificial bananas, I think 16 to be exact, and a beaded necklace.
Oh.
That's it.
Wow. Okay. Sorry.
Is it kind of coming back to you?
No. There is a movie called Triplets of Belleville. Belleville. And it's this weird French animated film. And like one of the opening scenes is like this. It's about this like old lady who adopts her grandson and like trains him to try to be in the Tour de France.
Okay.
But like the opening scene is her watching TV and it's that performance of the bananas and the necklace. 'Cause, like I was younger when I watched this, I was like, oh my god, there's boobs. They're animated boobs, but it's French, so it's fine.
Truly.
Wow. Okay. Sorry.
No, that's
just
crazy.
Like, it was just like, oh, that's what that is. All right, cool.
No,
All
that's a crazy correlation. Well, I mean, because that's the thing, right? Is that this performance, the Danse Sauvage, whatever, is like the iconic image of the Roaring 20s. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it is French inherently, obviously, but like, because she was American born, because she did have influence internationally, but also in America, like that image is so, or sometimes you might see with like her cheetah. She's like a pet cheetah that like wears a diamond collar. Like she was depicted in so many ways.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We should probably watch that. Add it to the movie list. So artificial bananas, beaded necklace. So this set the standard for her future acts, and she was a sensation across Paris and France.
Well, how could you not be?
How could you not be? So during this time, her success coincided with the Exposition des Arts Décors. I don't know. Which a coin that I'm so sorry, everyone. First of all, French is just wild to me. Truly, it just is. And second of all, like I don't.
Do you want me to say it for you?
Yeah, please.
I need to read it.
Oh.
Décoratif.
Décoratif?
I believe so.
All right. We'll give it a shot. Why not? Exposition des Arts Décoratifs.
Yeah.
Did I say it right?
Close enough.
Sure. Which coined the term Art Deco.
There you go.
And renewed an interest in non-Western art forms, including African. So Baker would represent such an image and theme.
Des Arts. Sorry, go ahead.
Des Arts?
Because if I remember correctly, with the S and then a vowel, it would kind of like sling together when you're pronouncing it. Because if it was just, because like DES is the plural form of de, which is just DE, which means of.
Sure.
But I believe that might be like of the, essentially. But like if it was just like singular, it would be D apostrophe ART. So it'd be dar. But with this, it's like des arts.
Because it was plural.
Yeah. And like you have that consonant and then vowel.
That's really annoying.
Yeah.
Okay. See, again.
It all just like guttural and like slurs together.
So Baker's success continues to prosper, and in later shows in Paris, she was often accompanied on stage by her pet cheetah named Chiquita, who wore a diamond collar. Chiquita apparently frequently escaped into the orchestra pit and terrorized musicians. Seen as adding another element of excitement to the show.
Yeah.
As you will.
That.
So she became the most successful American entertainer in France.
Yeah.
Ernest Hemingway called her, quote, the most sensational woman anyone has ever saw, end quote, and spent many nights talking with her. Picasso, Chassing, Matisse, and other artists depicted her and were inspired by her. Jean Cocteau helped launch her into international stardom.
Sure.
Baker even endorsing products such as Baker Fix hair gel, banana shoes, cosmetics, and more.
Like Chiquita banana?
Just
or
bananas.
No, just bananas?
I think just bananas. Right. She didn't have the whole...
Yeah.
So in 1927, Baker stars in the silent film Siren of the Tropics, but in French, and releases her first... recording, L'Age du Cabaret.
Sure.
L'Age du... It's Lage, but the A has the little thing over it. So L'Age du D apostrophe O-R, deux, D-U, cabaret. L'âge d'or du cabaret. Right?
Sure.
But like without the enunciation.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Everyone understands. They get it. This is going to be a fun episode. And that was her first recording.
Yeah.
So 1927, okay? So in 1929, while on tour across Europe via the Orient Express, which they're bringing back. I saw it, the pictures of it. It looks fucking incredible. And I want to ride it so badly. Because, like, it is very, like, 30s forward. Like, it has, like, that opulence and that style. And, like, just, like, it's sleek and it's gort. And I just want to do it. But it's going to be, like, $10,000 for a ticket.
Start saving up.
Truly. Just like, oh, it looks so good. Okay, so Baker, she toured across Europe via the Orient Express, which we all want to be on. Baker became the first African-American to visit Yugoslavia.
Oh, wow.
In Serbia, she donated some of the proceeds to poor children. She added nods of local culture to her show, such as in Belgrade, using the Pirokilim, which is a woven tapestry rug, in one of her routines. During her tour, Baker was accompanied by Count, in quotes, Giuseppe Pepito Abatino. And the reason...
Italian.
Giuseppe. Abatino had convinced Baker to let him be her manager as he passed himself off as a count. That's why count is in quotes.
Sure.
Even though he was a former Sicilian stonemason. You know, you get those two confused a lot, so I get it. He did become her manager and her lover.
Oh.
But the two could not marry since her divorce to Willie Baker had not finalized.
Oh.
So they were just lovers.
Shame.
I know. Pepito, you know. In 1931, she releases her most successful recording, deux amours. I think I said that wrong. The song states, quote, I have two loves, my country and Paris, end quote. That was her big thing. That was... The song cemented her assimilation and popularity in French culture because they got it. They get it. They're like, Paris, country, we get it. Different things. We love it the same. In 1934, she stars in Zuzu, which is the first sound film to feature a black woman in a leading role.
Oh, wow.
I know. This year she also took the lead in a revival of Jacques Offenbach's opera La Créole with a 6-month run. Baker went through months of vocal training to prepare herself. Shirley Bassey not only cites Baker as her primary influence, but states, quote, she went from a petite danseur sauvage with a decent voice to la grande diva magnifique. I swear in all my life I have never seen and probably never will see again such a spectacular singer and performer, end quote.
That was all good pronunciation.
Fuck yes. It's getting better. Only French things moving forward. In 1935, she stars in Princess Tam Tam and tours Argentina and Brazil.
Oh.
I think it's just incredible. Like,
yeah, she's going all over the place.
In 10 years. So from moving to New York to France, she's released 2 records. She starred in 3 films. She's now touring South America. Insane. In 1936, Baker starred in the revival of Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway to no commercial success and was later replaced by Gypsy Rose Lee. Oh. I know. Time magazine referred to her as, quote, pardon the word, quote, Negro wench, whose dancing and singing might be topped anywhere outside of Paris, end quote. Other critics stated that her voice was, quote, too thin and dwarf-like to fill the Winter Garden Theater. Fuck off. She was never able to attain the equivalent French reputation in America. Baker even became a legal citizen of France and giving up her American citizenship in 1937 when she married French industrialist Jean Léon.
That's interesting that she, her commercial success was really only centralized in France. I mean, granted, she went on world tours, but she would never see as great of success as she did outside of Paris.
Totally. I think one, Paris and France itself, I think through Europe, she really had a good presence. And then, of course, that reached elsewhere minimally. I think the reason she never had success in America was just because of how much racism and segregation there still was at the time. You know what I mean?
Fair. 100%.
So and if she's going to be an icon and she is allowed to be who she is in France, right? Not only as a black woman, but she can be big and bold and she can do these dances and she just fits into that culture. So not only is she bringing kind of Parisian culture into America, but as a black woman on top of that, who has now found freedom in France, it just clashed.
Yeah.
And so I think the people were just kind of like, we're not messing with you. Even if she was good, I think they would have been like, no.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately. But she did have some potential relationships with, like, I think it was both Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith.
Oh.
Which then those two were also together. And I was like, there's a lot of things happening here. So she married, like I said, French industrialist Jean Lion. Although it's spelled Lion, not Lyon, like Lyon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it is Jean Lion. You know,
it could be.
That's how we pronounce it. Very
John
American.
Lion.
My name is Jean Lion. By the time we reach 1939 and the start of the war, Baker is critically acclaimed and has reached peak celebrity status. Something to note is that in the late 20s, early 30s, while traveling through Germany and Eastern Europe, she did endure severe hostilities where she was targeted with ammonia bombs and told to, quote, go back to Africa, end quote.
Yikes.
So it's like not an original line. You know what I mean? It was for the time, but like now I'm just like, guys, we gotta stop pulling influence from Nazi Germany. You know what I mean? Like, we're done. So World War II happens.
It sure does,
if you will. France declares war on Germany after the invasion of Poland in September of 1939, and Baker is recruited to the Dieu-Aimé. Okay, you're gonna have to read that one. Dieu-Aimé Bureau. Right? It's not just me.
DM.
DM?
DM. I believe.
GM? Okay.
DM.
Okay. Okay, so again, French people, as in all of France, declares war on Germany. After the invasion of Poland in September 1939, Baker is recruited to the DM Bureau. The Bureau, because I'm not going to say it for French, was a French military intelligence agency where Baker now worked as a, quote, honorable correspondent, end quote, a.k.a. spy, which is super fucking cool. Yeah. So Baker worked closely with Jacques Opti, the head of the French counterintelligence in Paris. I know people are just like screaming, that's not how you pronounce his last name. I don't care. With her popularity and status, Baker was able to rub shoulders and mingle and charm Germans, high-ranking Japanese officials, Italian officers, and more at embassies, house parties, ministries, nightclubs, cafes, etc. Right? She could listen in without suspicion and report back all information to Opti. Along with these social conversations overheard, Baker collected detailed intelligence on German troop movements and airfield and harbor locations. She was like, I got it all. Yeah. Don't you worry. She would use methods such as writing notes on her hands and arms, which I was like, I think that's a little obvious. Yeah. Right. I didn't want to say it, but that's what they said. Pinning notes inside of her clothes. So that's fair. And using invisible ink.
Oh, that's cool.
I was like, that's clever. I like that. While Germany invaded France, Baker left Paris and went to Chateau des Milans, Milandes. Milans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the south of France. So this became one of the most important hideaways, especially in World War II. Baker would shelter resistance fighters and Jewish refugees. She would provide them with forged documents, money, food, clothing, and more. Her home also provided the center of resistance activities with the installation of a radio transmitter to stay in communication with Allied forces.
Wow.
And stored weapons in the cellar.
Damn.
This was a big fucking chateau. Her status as an entertainer, or with her status as an entertainer, she had excuses to move through Europe and even South America to gain and transmit information. She would carry information to England about German troop concentrations in the west of France through invisible ink on her sheet music. I was like, that's pretty cool too.
Shit.
That's awesome. In 1941, she entered North Africa under the guise of health concerns that she was recovering from another case of pneumonia, but she was really there to continue resistance support and would make tours of Spain from Morocco.
Oh, okay.
Meeting with the Pasha of Marrakesh to become an ally, even. The Pasha did help her through severe health issues, though, such as a miscarriage, hysterectomy. So she had a miscarriage, which then activated a hysterectomy, and then that hysterectomy was peritontis. peritonitis, sure, and sepsis.
Oh,
so like she was like it just like hit, and like basically they were able to take care of her.
That's good.
Right. Post recovery, she began to perform for Allied troops in North Africa.
Oh,
so they didn't really have like everywhere else in Europe, kind of everywhere else, like had kind of organized performances for the troops, right? They didn't really have that in Bob Hope. So she really took on like the helm of that for North Africa.
Okay, cool.
But she performed for anyone. They didn't charge. But I do think they kept civilians out. I think it was like just a troop thing.
Probably.
Makes sense. So after the war, Baker is rewarded the Resistance Medal by the French Committee of National Liberation and the Croix de Guerre, the Cross of War, by Guerre. By the French military, and was named a Chevalier of the Légion d'honneur by General Charles de Gaulle.
Okay.
You got it.
Yeah.
You're there. You know what? I'm never doing something French again. In 1947, all right. In 1947, she marries French composer and conductor Joe. It is literally J-O. Joe.
Okay.
I was like, I just want everyone to know.
Joe
Bouillon. After marrying Joe over the years, Baker adopts what?
Nothing.
What?
Go
What's
ahead.
funny? Did I say it
Joe?
wrong?
No.
Okay.
Bouillon.
Would you say je?
Just keep going.
Over the years, Baker adopts 12 children of different nationalities.
Okay.
Different nationalities and religions, calling them her, quote, rainbow tribe.
Wow.
End quote.
All right.
I don't think we need to like, dive into that, but
we're okay.
She did it. Post World War II, in 1949, Baker reinvents herself with a new gravitas, unafraid to take on serious music or subject matters. So her return is a triumph, which was bolstered by her recognition of her wartime efforts and heroism.
Yeah.
In 1951, she was invited to speak at an NAACP engagement in Atlanta, but when she was refused lodging in the city, she canceled.
How do you, what? Okay.
Well, she was like, I'm not dealing with this segregation bullshit.
Yeah, I'm done.
Baker made a standard that she will refuse to perform in segregated establishments and constantly challenge her country to change its ways.
Yeah.
In the same year, she was invited to perform at a nightclub engagement in Miami for $10,000, which is huge at that time.
That's massive, yeah.
But made it clear that she would not perform to a segregated audience.
Sure.
She eventually won the public battle and performed to a sold-out run and followed it with a national tour.
Wow.
Including a parade in Harlem to honor her as the NAACP's Woman of the Year.
Oh.
I know. While rave reviews followed her everywhere, as did the country's racism and segregation being refused at restaurants and hotels. She had a lot of like open criticism towards segregation, and she forced venues to integrate in order for her to perform there, right? Even being the impetus of integrating Las Vegas before Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of that like is attributed to those two.
Sure.
But she was touring there before and like really forced them to make sure there was integrated audiences. So at an upscale club in New York, the Stork Club, she was refused service and scolded an old ally when publicizing her story, columnist Walter Winchell, for not rising to her defense. So basically she like walked in the Stork Club and they were like, no. And she was like, no one's gonna fucking say anything. And so she like wrote her story out and like published it and then called out Walter being like, bro, you're not gonna help me out here?
Yeah.
So while she was there though at the club being refused, Grace Kelly was there as well and rushed over to her, took her by the arm and stormed out with Kelly's entire party with her, vowing to never return.
Oh.
She did later, but like years later. So like not like right away at least.
Different management. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And the two became close friends from that incident. She actually helps her out a lot later.
Good.
Winchell responded to her, scolding of him with a series of harsh public rebukes, including accusations of her being an anti-American communist sympathizer. Yeah, that'll get her. Kind of did though, because Baker continued to where was it? Baker continued to fight against him and used her platform to fight against systemic injustice and for civil rights. Right?
Yeah.
These accusations resulted in the termination of Baker's work visa, forcing her to cancel all American engagements from that point forward and return to France. She was not allowed back in the U.S. for another decade.
Wow,
isn't that crazy?
That's a lot.
I know, it's a little too much.
Yeah,
I'm super fucking racist then, you know. 1957, 1959, Baker tours internationally, raising awareness for racial equality.
Oh.
I feel like after that, she was just like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to tell my story all around the fucking world. And I'm going to be like, oh, wow, that's a lot.
America's racist.
Right. Have you heard? May 20th, 1951 was declared Josephine Baker Day by the NAACP, where she was also presented with a life membership. Baker also led the efforts for the Save Willie McGee rally to save McGee. He was a black man who was convicted of raping a white woman in 1945 on the basis of suspicious evidence. Although her rallies and letters to the governor of Mississippi did not go unnoticed, McGee unfortunately was executed.
Yeah.
So Baker did become increasingly regarded as controversial, though. Some black people even began to shun her, fearing that her outspoken and racy reputation from her earlier years would hurt the cause. So, like, you're kind of known as this cabaret star, pretty racy, French. You're also, like, super vocal. Like, you kind of do your own thing that could hurt the ultimate overarching cause.
I don't know.
I think it was a small...
Yeah, a
small group. But it did kind of permeate a bit.
Sure.
I think that's the other thing is that, like, they're like, you've been living in France. Like, yes, she undoubtedly has faced racism, has faced segregation in her life and all of those things.
Right.
But I think some people really did see her as a French
rather
you know
than
what I mean?
American.
Correct. So in 1963, Baker was the only female speaker officially invited to speak at the March on Washington, alongside, obviously, MLK Jr.
Oh, wow.
I know. So she said, quote, I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens and into the houses of presidents and much more, but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee, and that made me mad. And when I get mad, you know that I open my big mouth, and then look out, because when Josephine opens her mouth, they hear it all over the world. End quote. After King's assassination in 1964, Coretta Scott King actually approached Baker in the Netherlands to ask her if she would take her husband's place as the leader of the civil rights movement.
Oh, wow.
Baker took days to consider, but ultimately declined, stating that her children were, quote, too young to lose their mother, end quote. In the 50s, the FBI actually opened a profile on her and kept track of all of her movements.
That's crazy.
And that kind of her... Winchell calling her that communist sympathizer aspect kind of was the impetus of that as well.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The Red Scare.
The Red Scare. Last year's, so in 1968, Baker had to sell her chateau, owing unpaid debts as she faced financial struggles. But Princess Grace Kelly offered her an apartment near Monaco, because she was the Princess of Monaco, where she lived and continued to perform to pay off her debts.
Oh.
I know. Princess Grace like, girl, I got you. In 1973, she performed at Carnegie Hall to a long-standing ovation.
Wow.
Baker faced struggles thinking that the world had forgotten her and didn't want her. This performance reinstated her motivation.
Hell yeah.
2 years later, on April 8th, 1975, Baker started in a retrospective review at the Bobino in Paris. This was to celebrate her over 50 years in show business. The review was financed by Prince Rainier, Princess Grace, and Jackie O.
Oh.
I know, right? It opened to rave reviews, and the demand for seating was so much that fold-out chairs had to be added to accommodate attendees.
That's a bit of a fire hazard, but okay.
That's what I said. I was like, isn't there a fucking... You can't just add more people.
Right.
Anyway, so opening night audience included Sophia Loren, Mick Jagger, Shirley Bassey, Diana Ross, and Liza Minnelli.
What a list of people.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's also 1975. You know what I mean? So 4 days later, on April 12th, 1975, Baker was found lying peacefully in her bed, surrounded by newspapers with glowing reviews of her performance. Which I think, like, the imagery of that is, like, beautiful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She was in a coma after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage and was taken to the hospital, where she unfortunately passed at the age of 68.
Wow.
Baker received a full Catholic Mass in Paris with more than 20,000 mourners.
Wow.
I know. She is the only American-born woman to receive full French military honors at her funeral.
I mean, she's a war hero.
Well, exactly.
She has the what do you say? Croix de Guerre?
Croix de Guerre.
Cross of War.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah,
that and others. She got other stuff too. What do you call it? But that's Josephine Baker. I feel like I kind of like ran through a lot of just like timeline of her.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing is like she
did so much.
She did so much. You know, she really did move to France and like took on and became a celebrity status, but she didn't let that go to waste, right? I think that like she very much could have just like huddled herself in Paris and in France and been like, this is my life and I just live here and I have these freedoms and I'm a star. You know what I mean? But she really took that back to America. You know what I mean? She lived, I mean, obviously she grew up until she was like 18, 19 in the US and then moving over to Paris. And so like, she was vocal. I mean, the fact that Coretta Scott King was like, will you be the head of the civil rights movement just shows how powerful she was and what kind of influence she had in the movement.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? And I feel like you just don't hear about it a lot when we talk about, the civil rights movement. And I think it's just because she was in and out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of people did view her as a French
person.
So I think it's really cool. And not only is she this iconic image and symbol of the jazz age in the roaring 20s, but she is also very much attributed to the civil rights movement in America. And she's a fucking World War II war hero.
Yeah. No, that's a long resume.
That's
awesome.
She was amazing. And so I remember hearing about her. I don't remember when, but I was like, that's kind of always stuck with me. I mean, she's just an incredible person, and what she was able to do. I do kind of want to now like look up some like see if there's some videos of her.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Because I'm sure that performance, like according to Shirley Bassey, is incredible. You know what I mean? But I do like that she, that time in Paris of like, with Hemingway and like Picasso and
such
all
a
those,
weird art time.
Yeah. But like I think of what was that really not bad movie but weird movie with Owen Wilson. Like Owen Wilson wasn't the right person to be in that movie. Midnight in Paris.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I think of like that. You know what I mean? Like all those people were intertwined at the time. You know what I mean? Everything today feels a little bit more like separated into like your quadrants. But it was just kind of this revival. Like I think of even like Leyendecker and like all of those things, like getting influence. Like Paris was that hub.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome and gorgeous. Truly gorgeous. But that's all I have for you today, Dev.
Hey, thanks for that amazing story.
Thank you.
Of an amazing woman.
Yeah. Cute, short little episode today, comparatively to my last one. Thought I'd keep it a little tighter today.
Yeah, well, you didn't have to yell as much about this one.
That is very true. A lot more celebration.
Yeah.
But thank you, everyone, for sticking around. It is... coincidentally, Black History Month as well when this releases. So it feels a little topical, but she's amazing. So look her up. You can look more into Josephine Baker, try to find some videos and things. But thanks so much for sticking around. You can find us all over social media at WDYK_podcast, except for Blue Sky, where you can find us at bsky.social. I'm gonna get it one day, but we'll see you there. But thanks so much, Dev, and I'll catch you next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.